he's an entrepreneur, an investor, and he'll tell us more about what he's doing. Mr. Paul, you're welcome to the podcast.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Okay, the first question I usually ask people is, for someone who may not know you, how do you introduce yourself?
Yeah. So my name's Paul. That's a big question. But first and foremost, I run a company called Shortlist, which works on human capital challenges across Africa. What that means in practice is that we're part recruitment firm and executive search firm and part youth employment accelerator, trying to get more young people earning and working both within Africa and in the global remote work economy. But more broadly than that, professionally, I'm someone who spent the last 20 years thinking about how business models can do something good for the world, whether that's alleviating poverty or improving climate and building a green economy or other things. And then personally, I'm a guy from a small town in Western New York State. I've spent much of my life living overseas. I'm a husband. I'm a new father. And I can get into a whole bunch of other areas of personal interests as well. But yeah, great to be on this podcast.
Okay. Let's start with Shortlist. I checked the social media Shortlist, your Twitter page, and I've seen the work you've been doing. So tell me, what was like the inspiration and the mission behind Shortlist?
Yeah, and we're very yeah. Thanks for asking that. So I spent many years before Shortlist working in financial inclusion and microfinance, thinking about how to help more low-income households and small businesses access financial services, so that they could invest in opportunities, insulate themselves against shocks, grab opportunities when they came, and generally be able to participate in economies more fully. That took me from microfinance in India to running a fintech venture capital fund, investing in fintech startups around the world. And it was in that work, my co-founder, Simon, was running clean energy investing at Shell Foundation. Both of us kept realizing that we would give companies money, and then their biggest problem became people. And while there's a million conferences, blogs, and podcasts about how do you raise money, there's not as much focus on how do you get the right human capital mix to grow a great business, to have the impact you want. How do we think more creatively about job creation and talent development, particularly in the global South and across Africa, where new technologies and approaches are opening up new opportunities of what's possible. So we started Shortlist. To be very honest, we weren't sure what the business would be. We knew we were going to be loyal to the problem of how do we solve human capital challenges to drive impact and innovation across Africa. And that's always been our mission. But we didn't know what the solution would be. So we initially thought it would be much more of a tech platform. We built an entire product suite that included chatbots, skills assessments, applicant tracking tools, basically ways that employers could more efficiently get to know young candidates, and particularly get beyond the typical things you look at on CVs into what is actual indicators of potential skill, et cetera. We had some success as a software business, but after a few years doing that, we just kind of realized that for us, the problem that motivated us originally needed a more hands-on approach. And so we became a little bit less of a tech company and a little bit more of a hands-on advisory business, where today we've migrated into still very loyal to the original mission, solving human capital challenges for companies we care about, but much more oriented towards being, on one hand, an executive search firm, doing leadership hiring in a very hands-on way across the continent. We've worked with over 1,000 companies in Africa, helping support senior leadership hiring. And on the other hand, working to try to create more employment opportunities across Africa. And to do that, Shortlist Futures, the other side of our business, we look at where do we see a lot of job opportunities coming soon. And we look at green economy as a big driver of jobs. We look at the global digital economy, particularly remote work, Africans being able to sit wherever they're sitting, in front of a computer and working for global companies. We see those as two of the biggest areas, and we've run a variety of programs supporting nearly about 10,000 people accessing direct work and engaging with many hundreds of thousands of, I think, over 1 million now young people with different tools to try to raise awareness about where the jobs are, trying to help them get the resources so they can go get those jobs, helping learn more about sectors that are on the rise.
Nice, nice. So, due to your work in Shortlist, I want to ask you this question. What are the main causes of the high unemployment sector in Africa? Because in the country where I come from, Uganda, 72% of the population is less than 30 years old. But of
Yeah,
that 72, almost half are unemployed.
yeah,
So what do you think is the main cause in your way through your work at Shortlist?
yeah. Well, I mean, the plain and simple, Africa has a jobs crisis. It doesn't have a talent crisis. It has just a severe mismatch between supply and demand. And so you can look at it on either side. On one hand, Africa is facing the most significant population boom and the workforce boom the world has ever seen. I don't know the background on I'm not a demographer. I don't know population analysis, but what I do know is that there are more young people entering the workforce over the next 10 years in Africa than the rest of the world combined. By 2040, 1 out of every 2 people in the global workforce will be African. So there's just a huge number of working age adults, and that number is growing in Africa. You pair that against the demand side, i.e., where are the jobs? And the reality is, Africa is just not growing enough. No economy probably could be growing fast enough to create that many jobs. The numbers that we see that seem pretty reliable are World Bank numbers, where they estimate that 11 million people enter the workforce every year for 3 million jobs. So we have a severe mismatch in terms of just the number of jobs. As we think about this, to us, the focus shouldn't be on I mean, a lot of people like to focus on education and skilling.
Yeah.
And of course, like that's rarely a bad thing. It's great for everyone to be more educated and more skilled. But the issues that Africa faces are not fundamentally a talent or skill or education problem. They're fundamentally a jobs problem. So a lot of what we are focused on is how do we drive more jobs? How do we make the jobs that do exist better ones? And so for us, that means looking any angle where jobs can be created. The green economy to us is an incredibly promising area. Some analysts expect over $100 billion to be invested every year in Africa's green economy. And if you think about green economy or climate or clean energy, these are areas that Africa has some really amazing advantages. Obviously, Africa is over 50 countries. It's diverse, but generally speaking, many countries in Africa have really huge renewable energy potential that is currently untapped. They have lots of natural resources, and like we mentioned before, the youngest workforce on the planet. So the opportunity to bring those together to drive more green industrial development, bring more production from overseas that are done in carbon intensive ways, bring it to Africa. It's really a win-win-win for the whole world. So I think green economy is one area. Remote digital work. Africa has a very young and digitally savvy population. The more that young people can be sitting wherever they're sitting, Nigeria, Egypt, Kenya, South Africa, et cetera, and be working for global companies, the better. That then lets you get around what are typical challenges around immigration and transport and the expense and challenges that entails, and lets people sit here and earn global incomes. So I think we're looking to cultivate that. And there's a number of other sectors that we want to look at: creative economy, arts, music, sports, tourism. But we kind of need all solutions we can to drive as many job opportunities as we can for young people.
Nice, nice, nice. So let me bring this scenario. I've come with my CV. I'm a graduate, let's say, of computer science. What skills or what additional items or I don't know should I add on myself to make myself job worthy, if I'm just say it like that, because
Yeah.
the number of graduates are increasing
Yeah.
for every
Yeah.
course. So what competitive advantage should I have in the
Yeah.
job market?
Let's assume for the moment that your technical skills are good enough, because I think in many instances the issue is not technical skills; it's other things. So I do think that investing in opportunities to learn soft skills and what I prefer to call durable skills, things like teamwork, communication, taking initiative, proactivity. These kinds of things are the things that will predict performance and getting jobs as much as technical skills these days. And those are quite hard to learn in, let's say, a traditional classroom training context, like a university classroom. So I think for young people, getting every opportunity you can to, even if it's free volunteer work, but to get exposed to working with global standard, high standard work, getting exposed to how people communicate in a professional workplace, how
Mm,
emails work, how you use calendars, how you'd use all the tools of the modern digital workplace, I think is really important. The other thing I'll mention, because it's a big question and there's lots of answers, we could have many hours of conversation just on
mm,
this. But one of the other things I think is overlooked is the entrepreneurial approach to getting jobs, to researching jobs. I think there's a tendency right now for too many young people to kind of show up at a job board and just start clicking apply. And then when nothing happens, when they never hear back, they get frustrated and they get angry at the system. And I empathize with that anger. It's very frustrating. I've been in those shoes. When I was moving from India to New York City 15 years ago, I tried to apply to 50 jobs and I didn't get a single interview. And I know what that feels like. With the benefit of hindsight, I kind of realized that the nature of this problem is you need to be solving the company's hiring problem, and you need to be looking at it from their point of view. What that means is clicking apply on a website is rarely enough. If you really want a job that's posted on a website, you should find a way to get to the top of the pile, which basically means sending proactive outreach to whoever you can find on LinkedIn that seems like they're the right fit, finding a friend that works at the company and have them introduce you to someone at the company to see if they'll do an informational interview. And then in that informational interview, make a great impression, ask good questions. And at the end of it, say, hey, is there any way you could put in a good word for me in XYZ? That will often help your case quite a lot. The other thing I remind people is that the jobs that get posted on a job board are only ever 20% of the job market. 80% of jobs are never really posted. It's an organization
mm,
that kind of knows they need to hire somebody. They haven't gotten
mm,
around to hire a job, that writing a job description or posting it online or things like that. But if the person shows up and it's the right person, the right fit, things can happen quickly. So a lot of it is, how do you create your own job? How do you convince organizations they should create a job for you? How do you kind of be in the right place, right time? And this is just a numbers game. Just try to keep talking to as many organizations as you find interesting. Find ways to talk to somebody who works there. It of course doesn't have to be the CEO, but just finding inroads in where you're expressing interest, you're learning more. Even that exposure itself, even if it doesn't yield a job, will likely make you a stronger candidate and will start to develop some of those other skills that'll make you attractive. But yeah, we could go on because there's of course a lot that young people can do to give themselves better chances of success.
Okay. So judging by your work at Shortlist on the African continent, what in your what in what in your view would be the future of the human capital on the continent? How do you see it in the next 20 to 40 years?
Yeah, I mean, everyone's trying to figure that out right now. One thing's for sure, because the future is already written, is the demographics of Africa. There will be more young people in Africa very soon than anywhere else in the world. I mentioned the stat before: by 2040, 1 in 2 young people will be African. So I do think that it's both a bit scary at times. It's also a huge opportunity if that youth dividend can be harnessed. I look ahead to a future where we have we have a real rich and dynamic economies across the continent. I think the green transition can be a massive opportunity for Africa. I was mentioning before, this combination of unique resources Africa has could make it a real center point to the world's efforts to decarbonize. If you think about all of the carbon intensive manufacturing activities, cement, steel, aluminum, et cetera, that go on in other countries powered by coal, it's a huge portion of where carbon emissions come from. If you could bring that to Africa, you don't have to ship raw materials all around the world. You have the workforce here, and you are powering those production activities, manufacturing activities with green energy. Well, instantly you've become kind of like you've reduced a lot of global emissions, not just Africa's emissions, because Africa's emissions are very small. Africa only contributes about 3% of global carbon emissions. So I think the opportunity to lean into this green transition, to take advantage of Africa's leapfrog potential over traditional coal. There's only a few countries in Africa that have traditional energy infrastructure. So the opportunity to build smokestackless industries, things like tourism and other areas, I think are very exciting. I do think Africa can become a hub for remote work as well, as more and more aging populations around the world run out of workforce, particularly in some of the new skill areas, software engineering, data science, AI engineers, and working with AI tools. I do think that Africa's youth can be a real advantage, and jumping right into those jobs, and having a lot more people, ideally millions more people working in that sector. And so if you're an organization, and this includes organizations in China and around the world that are looking at Africa, don't just think about Africa as natural resources, think about it as human resources and talent. So I think we're really optimistic about that for the future. There's, of course, a lot of challenges also that have to be worked on. Leadership and political challenges, governance challenges, macroeconomic. I mean, the debt burden that many African nations face is really challenging. So there are certainly challenges, but there's also a lot to be optimistic about.
Okay, and you've spoken about AI there. There's that phobia for AI when it comes to the human capital area. It will take our jobs, the machines will replace us, become redundant. What, according to what is your view on AI on the human capital sector?
Yeah, my view on AI is complicated in the sense that we see a lot of areas of concern and pessimism, and we see areas for optimism. So on the pessimistic side first, I think it is a totally valid fear and concern that AI will be a net job killer. If you are already a software engineer or a data scientist, you're working at Google or Microsoft or something like that, I believe your job's probably pretty safe. I think you'll probably find ways to use AI to become more productive and more valuable, and that's great for you. What I'm concerned about is that Africa, I'll give you one example. The global business service segment. This is a segment that includes things like business process outsourcing, call centers, things like that. That employs about 45 million people around the world and has been growing at 8% a year. Africa has just 2%. Just about a million of those jobs are in Africa. The hope was, among many of us, that we would take advantage of the ongoing growth of that sector to create millions of new jobs. The issue with AI is not whether AI will kill all 45 million of those jobs. Does it stall the growth of those jobs in such a way that net new jobs don't come to Africa? We don't know, but I think that's the fear that we live with, that the new job explosion, that the remote digital work demand won't be as strong as we projected because AI has proven quite capable at doing basic coding, basic data analysis, basic customer service interactions. So I think that's scary. On the positive side, I think AI can be a great leveler and great up leveler, where we've seen that some of the biggest gains from AI is among talent that is starting at a more mediocre or even behind level. And so it has a way of, let's say, in a call center context, someone who might be a low performing call center worker now augmented with AI can become as good as the best call center worker. So the hope is maybe this can be used to level up more quickly the youth population to make more folks more productive. I think that's viable. I do think more young Africans, because they'll be digital natives and they'll be AI natives, will be able to take advantage of tools more quickly to create value, to start new businesses, to start to be able to perform differentially better in a global economy. And I do think there will be applications for generative AI to improve incomes. We have just launched a fund with Gates Foundation called the Gender and AI Livelihoods Fund, where we'll be providing innovation grants to a series of NGOs and companies who are using generative AI to promote women's economic empowerment. And so specifically, that means trying to promote more job access and more income generation among women across Africa. We're hoping that in that work, we find a series of things to be really optimistic about, use cases and applications where it can generate really outsized income gains. So I think the reality is no one knows. I don't believe anyone who says they confidently know the answer. I think this is very untested terrain. I also think throughout the last 1,000 years of human history, we have seen that sometimes tech innovations create a lot more jobs in surprising ways. Sometimes they really do destroy jobs or are bad for workers. And I think it's too early to know where AI will shake out.
Okay, nice, nice, nice. I like the way you've answered that question. My next issue that I want to address would be like there's a lot of brain drain on the continent. Talented people are leaving to maybe the diaspora where I am currently. Asia, Europe, and the US. Do you think in the long term, shortlist can help solve that problem? Can you be part of the solution?
Yeah, I mean, a small part, and no one company will address solve what you're talking about. First off, I have a slightly different take. My hope is for a future where there's more economic mobility of all kinds, and in cases that will mean people may leave their home countries for better professional opportunities. I've left my home country for a different professional opportunity. I know it's a very different circumstance, but I do think mobility and optionality and choice are good. I think what I hope to see though is a future where people don't feel like they have to leave. I mean, it's been discouraging to see, for example, the Nigerian trend, Japa, fleeing Nigeria for UK and other markets, where as soon as people have enough resources and professional ability, they leave. Not out of a sense of seizing opportunity, but more because they're not seeing the opportunities they want where they live. I don't think, of course, don't think that's healthy. I think we want to help promote more economic opportunity and pathways to economic prosperity for as many people as possible in as many different formats as possible. First and foremost, we hope to create more great jobs and career pathways within small and growing businesses, SMEs across Africa. I think there's more we can do to not just help those businesses grow, but grow in ways that are labor positive, that are workforce positive, that create more jobs, that create better jobs. I do think, I've mentioned before, driving green economic growth, because those are great jobs. But I do think sitting in Africa working for global companies is a great option. I do think in select instances, migrating for jobs will also be a good option. We've done very little work in this space, but have been speaking to different organizations about opportunities for Africans to move to, say, Germany which is facing now a bit of a demographic crunch because they have an aging population. Many people need more care, nurses, health workers, hospitality workers. Those are great jobs that pay well. And I think we believe the answer is all of the above, rather than being kind of like choosy. But I do hope that we can be part of the solution to say that if you're a talented young person and you want to find a great job in Africa, I hope you don't have to leave to do it.
Okay, nice, nice. Um, so your work with your work at Shortlist, what would you say have been like your successes so far?
Yeah, I mean, a few. It's been a all entrepreneurial journeys are fascinating and full of surprises, and ours is no exception. When we started this business, we had thought and hoped that we would be a tech business, and start
Mm,
in Africa and actually India, where we also began, and kind of expand from that to the world. I think the more we got into it, the more we realized that focusing on Africa and the unique dynamics across the continent would be the best place, particularly given our combination of impact and commercial interests. I think one thing I'm really proud of is we've shown a spotlight on the importance of human capital to drive the growth and success of companies in Africa. I think human capital is often overlooked. I mentioned before, everyone loves talking about money. Everyone loves talking about investment. They love talking about what your latest fundraise was and what your valuation was, when really, fundamentally, what drives success or failure of companies is people. And you don't see the same press releases or TechCrunch news stories about the amazing new chief operating officer you hired, or the new head of programs you hired, or something, when in reality, those predict success often more so than the
mm,
money. I think that's often because people think money instantly translates into people. In other words, if you have the money, you can go hire the person and all your problems are solved. But
mm,
it's not really the case. Skills and labor markets in Africa are very inefficient. There takes a lot of work and a lot of creativity to actually get the right person at the right time, even if you have the money. So I think shining that spotlight on human capital, giving companies in the impact and innovation economies, startups, social enterprises, investors, philanthropies, giving them serving as a partner to them while they're doing their important searches, helping them think more strategically about workforce engagement and talent programs. I think that's been, I'm really proud of the role we've played across the continent on that. And then very specifically trying to cultivate areas of new job opportunity and economic opportunity. I'm really proud of the work we've done in green economy. We've worked with hundreds of businesses, particularly in the energy access field, but also across climate and green economy, waste remediation, e-mobility, conservation, et cetera. And we've not just raised awareness among hundreds of thousands of young people about opportunities in the green space, but very specifically worked with and placed into jobs, internships, apprenticeships, over 6,000 young people who now have had really valuable career experiences, and the vast majority of whom are now in career track roles within formal sector, wage employment, jobs in the green economy. Many of them started as customer service agents or field sales agents, and now been promoted up through the ranks into different jobs in this growing sector. So really, really proud of our work there. The last thing I'll mention is just some of the enabling work we've done to help more young people work in global remote jobs. One of the things we saw a few years ago was that more and more young people were getting job offers from global work companies, things in data annotation. So these are the people that are helping autonomous vehicles see better by tagging images and saying, that's a stop sign, that's someone crossing the street, because that's how these computers learn. And organizations were coming to Kenya, offering young people jobs, but saying, hey, you have to bring all your own equipment. You have to have a laptop with this specific specifications. You need a power backup. You need internet. And they didn't have the money for that because they didn't have the job yet. So we financed over 1,000 young people to access some combination of laptop, power backup, and Starlink for internet, so that they can actually take these jobs once they have them, and then they just pay them back over 6 months out of their earnings. They own these assets free and clear, and now they have jobs where they're actually making real money working in the global digital economy. So I hope we can continue to kind of identify solvable barriers to more people earning and working across Africa, and then actually just going out and solving them. And that gives me a lot of, I think it's a lot of fun for us, and also really rewarding.
Amazing, amazing. So where can a client find Shortlist?
In terms of if they want to learn more and work with us?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the easiest place is our website, and our website has a lot more information on both of our business lines: Shortlist Search, which does executive search, and Shortlist Futures, which, as I mentioned, is a workforce innovation lab trying to help more Africans earn and work across Africa. The website's shortlist.net. And you can go from there. We do absolutely respond to every message that comes in through the website, and then of course on LinkedIn, where we're pretty active, sharing success stories, learnings, sometimes hard lessons, insights from our work. I would be happy to hear from people there.
Okay, okay. The next aspect of your career is you're an investor, and I'd want to say, when you look at the African economy, what are those areas that are really ripe for investment?
Yeah, I think it's a really dynamic, in good and bad ways, time for Africa. There's so much promise across the various industries. There's also the macroeconomic challenges I mentioned before: high interest rates, high debt burden, in some markets, inflation, which makes it really complicated to invest. I think I'm very excited about business models in the green economy, particularly businesses that aren't very capital intensive, can quickly get to cash flow positive and profitability. So the thousands and thousands of green enterprises that are picking up established businesses, but just executing them very well. So I think green economy is really exciting. I'm very excited, and I personally invest a fair bit in businesses that are not necessarily addressing the jobs crisis, but the other way around, are finding creative ways to harness human potential on the continent, to get more people connected to global opportunities. And because that's creating value for global organizations and global economies, making money that way. So these are companies that are essentially acting like mini agencies, finding pockets of skill demand in things like graphic design and marketing and sales outreach and QA automation and things like that, where they go out, they find the clients and organizations that need that work. They find Africans that they can train to do this work, and then putting those two together. So I think that's an area that I'm excited about. And I think EdTech will, I hope, continue to be a popular area as we think about how do we more efficiently, scalably prepare not just thousands, but literally millions and tens of millions of young people across Africa for what the labor marketplace of the future will demand. So yeah, a lot of promise.
Okay, and what would you say for those who are so much into cryptocurrency as the way to go?
I don't know. I'm not a crypto expert or evangelist. To me, it still feels too much like a lottery or a casino, in the sense that it's up and down, sometimes in predictable ways and sometimes in non-predictable ways. So as a store of value, I'm not so sure. That said, I'm not intrinsically opposed to the idea that there are parallel currencies and the value of a currency that, without the intermediary of a national government, lets you participate in the global economy. I do think that for countries, citizens in countries where the depreciation of local currencies has been really significant. I absolutely understand the importance of having something tied to global currencies that are more tradable and let you engage in the global market. So I see that value, but I'm the wrong person to ask about where
Mm,
to invest, what the opportunities are. Certainly, there's been some problems in Africa of late with certain executives of important crypto companies being
mm,
arrested, being held. So
mm.
I think we're all figuring that out.
Nice. Among the last questions I'll ask you will be they've said that the next century is Africa's century in terms of economic output, and they're projecting about like of the top 50 top economies by 2100, about 17 will be African. Do you share that optimism?
I have to. I have to hope that can be true. We've talked already. There's a lot of challenges and as well as a lot of opportunities. Certainly, I believe the talent is here. The resources are here. Um, um, the potential fit and additive nature that different African economies could play within a global context and global priorities, all the pieces are there, but now they do need to be put together, and that's not a sure thing. Certainly, there are that some of the challenges at a macro economy, some of the political and leadership challenges that exist in different countries. People cite things like corruption and just the way that slows things down. I do think that with the right leadership, with a little bit of luck, I think Africa absolutely, and those I don't know that exact study, but I've seen similar studies. Certainly, I think Africa can have many of the fastest growing, most dynamic, most successful economies across the world, and that's my hope.
Okay. My last question to you would be for someone on the continent, or the youth listening to you and judging by your journey in Africa and your work in Africa, what advice would you give to them?
Yeah, I mentioned before finding ways to get exposed to world class work, being creative about and proactive and entrepreneurial about getting your job. But I'd also just say there's a lot of important problems that need solving in the world today. Find a problem that connects with what you're interested in. Don't fall in love with a solution, fall in love with a problem, and then learn everything you can about it and just find some place to plug in. I think too often people get paralyzed by a sense of, I need to have the exact right job or I need to be passionate about my day from J1. Passion is not something you just like stumble on and then have. Passion is something you work at and develop, and you work at and develop it by taking a little foothold of interest and then building on it, and then reading another article, and then reading a book, and then watching some YouTube videos, and then talking to a friend in that space, and then getting a first job that's doing one small thing over here, and then getting a second job that year or two later, or 3 years later, that does this other thing over here, and then slowly starting to build up career momentum towards actually making a dent in something that you care about. And passion will come if you pick something that your compass is pointing you at pretty early. The passion, don't worry about that. Just find that problem and start doing something to learn about it and contribute.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Paul, for coming by and sharing your insights with us. We
My
appreciate it.
pleasure. Thanks so much for
Yeah.
having me.
Yay. That was